Hey guys! Tonight, we travel to the edge of a wildflower meadow where something a little too perfect is about to unravel. You hear bees, those fat, fuzzy kind that sound like mini motorcycles, and the crunch of your bare feet in soft, sun-warmed dirt. Everything smells like rain-soaked thyme and sun-warmed peaches. If that sounds idyllic, it's because it is. Too idyllic, and you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are Persephone, and your life is fine. Perfect. Maybe, if you ask your mother, you live in a palace made of dew and honeycomb. Birds chirp your name in the mornings. Lambs practically faint to be near you. And your mom. She's Demeter, goddess of the harvest, queen of granola energy. One of the original don't touch my daughter types. Every morning, she brushes your hair with a comb carved from olive wood. Every evening, she blesses your dreams with poppies. She calls you Kor, which literally means girl, not young woman, not maiden, just girl. It's her subtle way of pretending you don't have opinions, but you do. Lately, you've been sneaking away from the palace garden, wandering further down into the hills where mortals don't go, where the ground smells like clay and something electric. You're not sure what you're looking for. Freedom. Trouble. Yourself. In one of those wanderings, you find a field, no temples, no bees, no Demeter, just silence, blissful silence. You lie down, fingers sinking into loam, and whisper things the sky never hears. Like how sometimes you want someone to not ask permission. Of course, the gods are always listening, especially the bored ones. Hades is one of those gods, ruler of the underworld. Technically your uncle, but let's not ruin the mood. He doesn't do brunch, doesn't crash mortal weddings. He stays in his realm, surrounded by wailing souls and cursed staircases, minding his own business, mostly. But then he sees you, dancing alone in a field that's half shadow, half sun. Your laughter cracks the air like lightning. He tilts his head and does that thing where one eyebrow arches like, "Who is that?" Now, important note. Hades isn't the mustache-twirling villain Hollywood loves. He doesn't want chaos. He just likes things quiet, predictable, eternally gray. So when you show up with flower crowns and ankles showing, it's like someone just threw a rave in his church. You don't notice him yet. You're busy whispering to a daisy about how tired you are of being a symbol of fertility. Whatever that means. You just want something real. Meanwhile, Hades watches from below, plotting something he hasn't done in 1,000 years. Intervene. Let's zoom out for a second. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Ancient Greek girls didn't exactly get a teenage rebellion phase. Most were married off before they could finish puberty. The myth of Persephone, some say, was a coded explanation for that loss of girlhood wrapped up in divine metaphors, but also fun fringe tidbit. Some vase paintings show Persephone laughing during her abduction. Yeah, laughing. Which either means A, the painter was bad at faces, or B, there's more to this story than tragedy. Back in the meadow, the earth begins to shift. A subtle vibration. You feel it in your fingertips. Like a drumbeat no one else hears. You glance down. The grass is curling, not burning. Curling, like it's being gently pulled from underneath. You blink. The sky darkens not with clouds, but with something else. Something heavier. And then, the ground cracks open. Just a sliver, not enough to alarm you. Yet, it looks like a rabbit burrow, only impossibly deep. From within, cold air, really cold. The kind of cold that smells metallic and ancient, like forgotten doorways. You stare at it. It stares back. Here's where historians start arguing. Some say Persephone was tricked. Others insist she knew, that she chose to linger in that meadow, that she even bent down closer to the crack, just enough to whisper, "Come on then." But you're just lying there, heart thudding. The wind shifts. You smell mint and ash. Then hooves. Not horse hooves. These echo like stone mallets. Rhythmic. Inevitable. And rising from the crack so fast, it makes the trees flinch is a black chariot. You don't even get a chance to scream. The horses are night-colored and foam-mouthed, their eyes full of fire and ice. And on the chariot stands Hades, cloak whipping like storm cloud wings. He doesn't say anything. He just reaches out, and you don't run. Not because you're paralyzed, but because for just a heartbeat you're curious. What happens if I go? And that's the real beginning. Not the scream, not the abduction, but the moment you stopped wanting spring. You don't remember the exact moment his hand touches yours? It's too fast, too cold, like catching snow with your palm. Only this snow steals the warmth from your entire body. The chariot doesn't stop. It scoops you like a tide, and suddenly, you're no longer lying in sunlight. You're flying through a crack in the earth, yanked down into a silence that swallows all sound. The meadow closes above you. You don't scream, not because you're brave, but because the air has turned to smoke in your throat. There's no up anymore, no horizon, just pressure. Down, down, and further down, like the world forgot to hit the brakes. The ride is long and bumpy and cold. Hades says nothing, just stands beside you on the bone-carved platform, staring ahead like a chauffeur in a particularly dramatic funeral procession. He's not what you expected. His hair isn't fire. His skin isn't ash. He's tall, tired, like someone who's read too many names on tombstones. His cloak smells faintly of myrrh and something older. Something that maybe shouldn't have a name. You keep your arms crossed. He glances at you once, just once. But in that look is the kind of silence that feels heavier than words. Eventually, the pressure eases. You're no longer falling. You're gliding through something vast and empty. The road ahead is paved with obsidian and tiny glowing stones, maybe souls, that flicker like forgotten memories. The horses begin to slow. You can hear your own breath again, ragged, angry. Welcome to the Underworld. If you were expecting lava and wailings, you're out of luck. The place is eerily organized, like a library with no books, just rows of whispering shadows and winding stone arches. There's architecture, yes, but none of it makes sense. Columns made of bones, doors without hinges, a river flowing backward in the air, all of it lit with a soft, ghostly glow like moonlight trapped in a bottle. You shiver, not from cold, from confusion, and yet something about it feels familiar. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's the way your thoughts feel louder here. Or maybe it's the fact that, for the first time in your life, your mother isn't watching. Here's your historical anchor for the night. The Greeks believed the underworld wasn't just a place of punishment. It was where everyone went. Heroes, farmers, gossipy neighbors. It wasn't hell. It was just the other side. A mirror world. You didn't burn, you faded. Slowly, the chariot stops. Hades dismounts with the kind of grace you wouldn't expect from someone who drives flaming horses underground. He holds out a hand. Again, this time not as a grab, but as an offer. You hesitate. It would be easy to slap his hand away, to run screaming down whatever staircase leads out of here. But where would you go? There's no exit sign, no Uber, and part of you, an embarrassingly curious part, wants to know what happens next. So you take it. His hand is still cold, but it doesn't crush this time. It just holds, like a question. He walks you past a three-headed dog. Yes, Cerberus. Yes, he's enormous. And yes, one of his heads is definitely wagging at you. You stare. He pants. The air smells like sulfur and surprisingly clean fur. Hades mutters something low, and the beast lies down, all heads resting like overworked bodyguards. You almost want to pet him. You don't. Yet, the palace looms ahead, black marble and gold-veined stone that reflects no light. The doors open themselves. They whisper, open. Not a creak, not a groan. Just that sound dead leaves make when they slide across tombstones. Inside, it's warm. There's fire and cushions and surprisingly good acoustics. Your sandals tap on the stone like they're being listened to. Every room is cavernous and oddly cozy. It's like someone tried to make death comfortable. You pass paintings that change when you blink, a harp that plays itself, a pool of still water that shows dreams instead of reflections. He leads you to a dining hall, a long, empty table, set for two. You sit. There's food. Yes, but not food you recognize. A bowl of glowing figs, a platter of shadow-colored bread, and in the center, a pomegranate, split open. Each seed glistens like a ruby dipped in sorrow. You don't touch it. He watches you, still silent, still waiting. But this time, His expression has softened just barely. There's something sad in his eyes. Like he didn't expect this to work. Like he's surprised you're not already demanding to go home. And here's your fringe tidbit. Some versions of the myth say Hades didn't just abduct Persephone, he fell in love with her first. From a distance, watched her, listened to her prayers, not in a creepy way. Okay? Maybe a little creepy, but in the way someone stares at sunlight they can't reach. Now, scholars still argue whether this was love or possession. Was he genuinely trying to build a partnership or just taking what he thought he deserved? Either way, you're here, and you're not entirely sure you want to leave. At least, not yet. Because in this quiet place of shadow and strangeness, you feel something you never expected to feel in the realm of the dead. You feel seen. You don't sleep that first night, which makes sense. Considering there's no real night here, the Underworld doesn't do sunsets. Time doesn't pass in the normal way. It just sort of unspools, like a thread that doesn't know what it's attached to anymore. You lie on a bed of black silk, staring at a ceiling etched with constellations no mortal has ever named. They shimmer faintly, rearranging themselves every few hours, or minutes, or centuries. Who's counting? Outside your door, things shuffle, murmur, whisper your name in tones like breath on glass. The palace is alive, not in the heartbeat sense, but in the knowing sense. It knows you're here, and it's watching. You sit up. There's no one in the mirror. By the way, it doesn't show reflections. It shows memories, yours. You catch flickers, your mother's arms around you. The meadow before it split. Your own face looking back at you, but younger, innocent, annoyingly cheerful. You don't miss her. Not yet. Morning doesn't come. But Hades does. He knocks. Politely, which is somehow more disturbing than if he'd just barged in like a classic villain. You open the door. He's wearing the same dark cloak, same unreadable expression, but his hands are behind his back like he's trying to soften the vibe. Come, he says. That's it. You follow, mostly because you're bored, and slightly because you want to see what death considers a morning routine. He takes you on a tour. First stop, the river Styx. You've heard of it. Who hasn't? It's not what you pictured. No flames, no skeletal ferrymen singing sea shanties. Just a wide, slow-moving current that glows faintly blue, like moonlight caught in syrup. Souls drift in it, not swimming, just being, faces half-formed, thoughts. Like ripples, Hades gestures. They're waiting for what? He shrugs. To forget. There's a silence between you. Not awkward. Not yet. Next stop. The fields of asphodel. This is the catch-all afterlife. For the average person, not evil enough for Tartarus, not impressive enough for Elysium, just beige eternity. Souls wandering through fields of pale flowers that never die, occasionally bumping into one another, whispering jokes no one laughs at. You wrinkle your nose. It's like a never-ending dinner party where no one knows each other. Hades chuckles. Just once. But you catch it. His laugh sounds like it got stuck halfway down a well. There's a moment where your eyes meet, and it's not unpleasant. Look, here's tonight's historical fact. The Greeks didn't believe in eternal reward for good behavior. Elysium wasn't for the virtuous. It was for the famous. If you were a poet, a hero, or a demigod, then you got the VIP lounge. The rest filed away like dusty scrolls. And the fringe tidbit, the River Lethe. Another one down here was believed to erase your memory completely. Some cults even drank mock versions of it in rituals, hoping to forget old traumas. Bit dramatic, but who are we to judge? Back in the Underworld, you're led through a hallway of statues, not carved. Real, frozen souls turn to stone. Expressions mid-scream, mid-sob, mid-laugh. Hades doesn't comment. You don't ask. Then finally, he brings you to the throne room. There's only one chair, and it's his. He sits, you stand. There's a tension here. Not dangerous, just undefined. You break it. So, what now? Am I supposed to be your queen? He tilts his head. Would you like to be? The question hangs, because it's not a threat, not a command, just a genuine offer, which is somehow worse. You cross your arms. I didn't exactly apply for this job. You didn't scream either. He has a point, and that's when you realize something odd. You're not scared. You should be. By all logic, you were abducted by the god of death and dragged into a realm of endless silence. But fear has turned into curiosity, maybe interest, maybe worse. Historians still argue whether Persephone was a victim or a participant. Was she brainwashed, seduced, or just relieved to finally not be treated like a symbol? You don't have the answer yet, but you sit, not on a throne, on the floor, cross-legged, and he doesn't blink. Later, he offers you food again. Same table, same pomegranate in the center, still untouched. You consider it this time. You've heard the rules. Eat anything in the underworld, and you're stuck. But no one ever said for how long. You don't ask. You just trace your finger over the edge of the plate. 6 seeds gleam, not 12. Not a whole fruit, just 6. Why 6? Maybe that's all he wants you to eat. Or maybe he's leaving the rest for choice. But tonight, you don't eat them. Not yet. You return to your room. Cerberus follows you halfway, tail wagging like a puppy who doesn't understand inter-realm hostage etiquette. You pet him? Because why not? You crawl into bed again. The ceiling constellations have rearranged themselves into a spiral. You stare, breathe. Try not to wonder why this place feels more like home than it should. Somewhere, far above, Demeter is screaming your name. But you're not ready to scream back. It starts with breakfast, or what passes for breakfast when you're technically not alive and also very much underground. You find a tray outside your door, black marble with inlaid bone handles. Because aesthetics matter. Apparently, on it, a bowl of figs that glow faintly violet, a loaf of dark bread that smells like molasses in thunderstorms, and a small cup of something steaming in silver. You sniff it, licorice, and maybe regret. You drink it anyway. It's warm, smooth, and you can't tell if it's feeding you or emptying you out. Either way, it settles. You dress yourself. No attendants, no fluttering nymphs, just a wardrobe full of velvet, silk, and armor. Yes, armor. Like someone wasn't sure if you were a queen or a gladiator. You pick a deep green gown and walk barefoot through a corridor of sighing walls. The palace breathes, and you walk in time with it. You're not scared anymore. You're bored, so you ask to explore. Hades raises an eyebrow when you appear in his study unannounced. He's surrounded by scrolls, maps of bones and starlight, and what appears to be a chess game against ghosts. He's losing. I want a tour. You say, not of the afterlife, of your world. He hesitates, not because he doesn't want to, but because he doesn't know what you mean. My world, he says, like the concept's foreign. Yes, where you think, where you hide. Where you actually are when you're not doing official Doom business. He smiles, barely. All right, first stop, the vault. A room that's not a room, more like a memory chamber. Inside are hundreds of jars, soul jars, not literal souls, just fragments, final words, regrets, names whispered by lovers who never got to say goodbye. He lets you hold one. It vibrates faintly, like sorrow trapped in a heartbeat. He watches you more than the jars. Then, the library. No books, just shelves of scrolls made of skin, not human skin. Thankfully, some ethereal material that writes itself as you think. You read one that starts spelling out your dreams. The scroll folds itself shut mid-sentence. You feel caught. Next up, the observatory. Yes, even death has hobbies. There's a tower high above the Styx, wrapped in vines made of shadow. Through a lens carved from moonstone, Hades watches the stars, your stars. The constellations mortals can't see. The ones that don't show up until someone dies. You point at one. It flickers. Who was that? You ask. A girl who leapt into the sea because she thought her lover's ship had sunk. Did it? No, he was just late. Greek tragedy. Ladies and gentlemen, that's your historical note. Ancient Greeks were deeply fatalistic. Love stories almost never ended well. In fact, most of them ended with someone mistaking a nap for death, or a letter for betrayal, or a god for someone worth trusting. They love to suffer beautifully. Your fringe fact. Some ancient texts claim Hades had a second wife before Persephone, an obscure nymph he cast aside. Others think it was a symbolic myth about death being once ruled by silence alone, until Persephone gave it voice. You don't ask him about exes. Yet, by now, you're oddly calm. You walk ahead of him now, past walls that whisper less, past doors that no longer try to spook you. The palace seems to be accepting your presence, shifting slightly, making room. There's a room you're not allowed in. Naturally, you go there. The door doesn't open for you, but the crack in the bottom glows faintly red. You sit outside it and wait. Hades doesn't come. When he does, he doesn't scold. He just sits beside you. That's where the shades go, he says. The ones who never want to leave. You glance at him, and what happens to them? They forget why they ever wanted to stay alive. You lean your head back against the door. You think about your mother, about fields of barley, about warm mornings and cold grape juice and bees, and you realize something unthinkable. You haven't missed it. Not really. You say, "Why me?" He shrugs. You were curious and kind and not afraid. That's not love. No, he says, but it's a start. You don't know how to respond, so you don't. That night, you walk alone. Cerberus trails you, all three heads snoring in sync. You find yourself into the Hall of Mirrors. Not because you meant to go there, but because this place seems to guide your steps the moment you stop deciding them. The mirrors don't show your reflection. They show possibilities. Versions of you that never left the meadow. Versions that screamed, that fought, that ate the seeds immediately, that ruled with fire, that begged to go home. One of them looks happy. Another looks haunted. You touch the glass. It's warm. Behind you, the air shifts. He's there. Neither of you speak, you just watch your almost selves. Then finally, Hades says, "If you want to leave, I won't stop you, but I won't remember this." You say, "Will I?" He hesitates, and for once, you see something unguarded on his face. Not love, not desire, but fear. Not of losing you, of you forgetting that you ever wanted to stay. Demeter's unraveling. Not metaphorically, literally. Up on the surface, the air thickens with rot. Fields once heavy with barley shrivel into dust. Olive trees bend like old men. Rivers forget how to flow. Bees stop dancing. And goats, those poor, overly dramatic goats, start collapsing in slow-motion protest. Your mother tears her temples apart with her fingernails. She curses every root, every cloud, every sunrise. People start whispering that the goddess of harvest has gone mad, that the world has been cursed, that maybe someone should send her chamomile tea. But it's not grief that drives her, it's obsession. She scours the mortal world looking for you, disguises herself as a beggar woman, barges into temples, turns a few kings into lizards. Classic goddess coping strategies. And when no one can give her answers, she marches up to Olympus. Zeus, golden king of couch-sitting and conflict avoidance, is trying to enjoy a nice, lazy thunderstorm when Demeter storms in. She's gone. She hisses. And I know you know where. Zeus does that thing where he scratches his beard and suddenly forgets how to make eye contact. Demeter threatens eternal winter. Not a metaphorical one. An actual ice age. She starts shutting down fertility like it's a light switch. No more flowers, no more grain. Even wine starts tasting like vinegar. Humans pray, sacrifice, panic. Nothing works. Zeus sighs. Here's your historical fact. The Greeks believed the seasons were directly tied to Persephone's presence on Earth. Her disappearance explained winter. Her return, spring. It wasn't about tilting axes or climate cycles. It was drama. And the fringe theory. Some ancient texts claim that Demeter didn't just mourn, she went to war with herself, with Zeus, with the order of nature. That the famine was not punishment. It was grief turned physical, back in the underworld. You don't know any of this, but you feel it. A tug, a weight behind your ribs, like something in you is aching for somewhere else. Not someone, somewhere. You find yourself staring longer into the pool of dreams, watching fields you can't name. Listening to winds that don't blow here, you start to ask questions. What happens to mortals who forget their names? They dissolve. What happens if a goddess dies? They don't. But if they did, Hades tilts his head. Then the world would have to change its rules. You stop eating again. You sleep less. Your mirror reflects a girl who no longer hums while braiding her hair, who starts arranging bones into constellations on the floor, who whispers to the dead and listens when they whisper back. You're not just living in the underworld now. You're becoming part of it. And that scares him. Hades starts offering you things, not trinkets, gestures. He gives you your own garden, carved out of a patch of dead soil and planted with flowers that bloom only under moonlight. Ghost orchids, shadow daisies, one plant that screams softly when you touch it. You dig your fingers in anyway. He gives you a key to any door, even the locked one. You don't use it. He even lets you send a message. One raven, one scroll, no promises. But he sees how you hold it like a goodbye. That's when Zeus sends Hermes, the messenger. God shows up wearing sandals that sparkle like he stole them from a disco ball, and a grin that says, "I'm here to cause problems on purpose. Time to go." He says, "You don't say yes, but you don't say no." Hades watches from the steps of the palace as Hermes leads you to the edge of the Styx. His eyes are unreadable again. You feel something heavy in your throat? Not tears. Not yet. Wait. Hermes says, squinting at you. Did you eat anything? You freeze. Did you? You think of the pomegranate. 6 seeds. You hadn't planned to. You just did. Half out of boredom, half out of curiosity. They tasted like secrets. Hermes whistles low. Oof, that's gonna complicate things. He turns to Hades. You knew. Hades doesn't deny it. She chose. Now, here's where scholars still fight. Did Hades trick you into eating? Did he let you eat? Or did you just maybe choose it yourself? Doesn't matter. The rule is the rule. If you eat underworld food, you belong. Not forever, but seasonally. A part-time queen. You stare at Hades, so I'm not free. No, he says softly. You're shared. That's worse. Somehow, you go anyway. As you rise toward the surface toward air and bees and screaming mothers, you look back once. Just once. The palace fades, but the weight in your gut does not. You carry the seeds with you. Always. The moment you touch the surface, the world exhales, literally. The air whooshes like a held breath released all at once. Grass springs up where it had withered. Trees remember how to leaf. Wheat, which had been staging a very dramatic death scene for the last few months, practically leaps out of the soil like, "We're back, baby." And Demeter, she finds you. She doesn't walk. She erupts into your space like a thunderclap wrapped in a tearful hug. Her arms lock around you before you can even say hello. She sobs, loud. Theatrical goddess sobs that make the clouds twitch and nearby peasants duck. My baby, you blink, squished against her shoulder, thinking, I am not a baby. But you say nothing, not yet. She lifts your face like it's a relic. You're safe now. You're home. He didn't touch you. Did he? You don't answer. Because what does that even mean? Did he touch you? No. Did he change you? Yes. And honestly, you don't know how to explain the part of yourself that still hears the hum of the underworld like a far-off lullaby. Zeus appears shortly after. Per usual, he's late and glowing unnecessarily. He smells like lightning and arrogance. Well, this has been dramatic, he says, as though he wasn't hiding behind a cloud for most of it. But now that Persephone's back, the world can return to balance. Right? You speak before your mother can. I ate 6 seeds. Dead silence. Demeter pales. Zeus squints like someone just ruined his brunch. Seeds. Pomegranate. You clarify, because you like accuracy. 6. Zeus mutters something that sounds suspiciously like a swear. Demeter staggers back like you've stabbed her with a fruit knife. No, she whispers. No, no, no. Then she must return, Zeus says, rubbing his temples. Half the year. No. Demeter shrieks. She's mine. Here's your mainstream historical fact. This is how the Greeks explained the seasons. When Persephone is with Demeter, the earth is warm, green, fruitful. But when she returns to the underworld, Demeter mourns and the world withers. And your fringe tidbit. Some lesser-known cult myths suggest Demeter chose to allow the world to suffer not just out of grief, but as leverage, a divine hostage negotiation. Back in the clearing, things are escalating. Demeter grabs Zeus by the collar. Zeus looks like he regrets taking this meeting. You step between them. Enough. They both blink. I'm not a sack of grain to be bartered. I'm not a flower that blooms on command. Zeus raises an eyebrow. You're still a goddess. I'm a queen. You pause. Of both. The silence after that is heavier than thunder. Eventually, Zeus nods. 6 seeds. 6 months. Demeter falls to her knees, sobbing again. This time, less like a storm and more like a broken roof. You kneel beside her. You stroke her hair. You say, I'll come back, but I won't come back small. She doesn't answer. That night, you sleep in your old bed. The sheets smell like honey and memory. The air is warmer. You're surrounded by everything you once called home, and yet, you lie awake. You miss the hush of shadowed hallways, the weight of silence, the gentle pressure of souls brushing past you like wind. You close your eyes and dream of ghost orchids. Morning comes, and you smile. because you know the clock has started. 6 months from now, you'll return, but not as someone stolen, as someone claimed, by herself. You count the days like pomegranate seeds. 1, 2, 3. You walk the sunlit fields. You smile. You wave. You bless a harvest with a flick of your wrist and a sigh. But your fingers itch for obsidian stems. Your toes miss the cold floors. Your dreams turn dark, not in a frightening way, but in a velvet way. 4, 5, 6. Demeter hovers. She tries to distract you with temples, festivals, picnics with nymphs who laugh too loud and touch your hair without asking. They braid you in daisies. You let them. But the minute they look away, you yank them out like weeds. It's not rebellion. It's grief, a backward kind. The kind you feel when you're not where you belong. You begin to disappear again. Quietly, here's your historical fact. The Eleusinian Mysteries, one of the most sacred religious rites in ancient Greece, were based on your story. Persephone's descent, return, and the symbolic death-rebirth cycle of all living things. People traveled from across the Mediterranean just to walk in silence, blindfolded, through a temple lit by torches and secrets. And your fringe tidbit, the initiates weren't allowed to tell what they saw, but a few naughty philosophers spilled hints. Barley, water, a torch, and something about things said, things shown, and things done. Interpret as you will. Back in the world of gods, the 6th month arrives, and you descend. Not abducted, not dragged. You walk, calm, intentional. Your mother doesn't try to stop you, not this time. She watches from a hilltop, her face hard as marble, her eyes full of falling leaves. She won't say goodbye, but she also won't say no. You descend through a cave mouth. The light fades behind you. The air cools. Your breath slows. Step by step, you return to the place no one thought could be called home. The underworld welcomes you like a sleeping house that suddenly turns on all its lights. Cerberus meets you at the threshold, tail wagging so hard it sounds like a war drum. You scratch behind his middle ear, the one that twitches when he dreams. Hades is waiting, but he doesn't greet you with a crown. He bows, and the whole realm shifts, because this time, it's not just Persephone returning. It's Queen Persephone. You take your seat beside him, not lower, not to the side, but equal. The two thrones look more balanced now. The entire throne room exhales, and then the court begins. Ghosts come with grievances. River spirits request diplomatic favors. The Furies bring their usual chaos. You listen. You pass judgment. You pet Cerberus under the table when no one's looking. You're good at this. Suspiciously good. Because half of you is sunlit justice. But the other half, the half that tasted those 6 seeds, that half is shadow. And shadow sees what light refuses to. You begin to make changes. Small ones. A new corridor opens for souls who died misunderstood. You assign each one a whisperer, a guide to help them untangle the mess they left behind. You order a new garden, one where memory blooms instead of fear. Hades watches you, with awe, with caution, with something like devotion. If gods can do that, one night, he asks, do you miss it? You're sitting in the ghost orchid garden. Their petals glow like pale fireflies. You consider, sometimes, he waits, but not the way I thought I would. He nods. You ask, do you miss before me? He's quiet for a long time. Before you, it was simpler, but it wasn't better. The silence between you is comfortable now, predictable, like gravity. And then he asks, very softly, would you stay? You don't answer. Not because you don't know, but because 6 seeds say you can't. 6 months later, the surface calls you again. But this time, when you leave, you take a part of him with you. A shadow in your pocket. A hush in your voice. A softness in your gaze when mortals cry over things that don't last. They call it spring when you return. But you know better. You don't bring flowers. You bring perspective. Leaving becomes a ritual. You don't just walk out. You descend upward. The phrasing doesn't make sense until it does. Each time you part the veil between realms, it feels a little less like crossing a boundary and a little more like slipping between versions of yourself. You in the sun. You in the shadow. Both true, neither complete. Demeter greets you with open arms and carefully hidden panic. She always pretends she wasn't pacing, always pretends she hasn't been whispering to roots for months, begging them to hold off on blooming until you arrive. You let her pretend. It's easier than telling her you smell smoke on your own skin now. Easier than explaining that you're not sure who you grieve more, her or the version of yourself that used to feel safe in her garden. This time, you bring stories with you. From the dead, one about a girl who wrote love letters into the bark of every tree she passed, just so they could read them after she was gone. Another about a soldier who wanted someone to tell his mother he died bravely, even though he really just tripped. You tell these stories to nymphs and farmers. You sow them into spring like seeds. They grow. Your following grows. 2. Not just in temples, but in fields, in homes, in the quiet rooms where women birth children and bury their parents and whisper to their daughters, you are not just sunshine. They start praying to you, not just your mother. And Demeter feels it. She doesn't say anything directly, but the honey she serves becomes more bitter. The weather a bit less predictable. You pretend not to notice. Here's your historical fact. In some regions of ancient Greece, Persephone was worshipped above Demeter as the true ruler of life's turning. She who understands death is she who values growth. Fringe tidbit. A few mystery cults whispered that Persephone held secret rites for women, only rituals of burial and rebirth, of blood and shadow, no men allowed, no torches lit. Back in the Underworld, Hades builds you something new, a corridor. You don't ask why, you just explore it. Each door inside opens to a different version of reality. One where you never left the meadow. One where you ruled Olympus instead. One where you were mortal, died at 13 of a snake bite. Forgotten in 2 generations. You shut that door gently. You ask Hades, "Why give me these?" "Because the living never see themselves clearly," he says, "and the dead, they see too much." You think about that for days. You start keeping a journal, not a flowery one, not filled with poems, just a record. Names, stories, the shape of souls, what they regret, what they forget, you name it. The garden of could-have-beens. One night, a ghost child slips into your room. No one summoned him. No one remembers him. He asks if he can stay. You tuck him into a bed made of whisper wool and cover him with memories stitched into a quilt. Cerberus curls around the bed like a cradle. You don't sleep that night, but you feel rested. You begin attending judgment sessions, standing beside Hades instead of in the shadows. Sometimes you disagree with him, sometimes loudly. He never silences you. Sometimes he even changes his mind. Are you growing soft? You tease, only where you are. He replies. And then one day, you try to leave, right on schedule. The road won't open. The river won't rise. You look at the boundary and see nothing but fog. What's happening? You ask. Hades doesn't answer right away. Then softly, maybe it's not your turn to leave this time. The rules are clear. 6 seeds, 6 months. But the rules are made by gods. And gods are notoriously moody. Demeter will panic. The mortals will suffer. But something in you is thrilled. Not because you're trapped, but because for the first time it feels like the world might finally miss you on your terms. Still, you worry. You pace the garden of ghost orchids. You talk to yourself in mirrors that only show your past expressions. And then the raven arrives. Its eyes are made of ink. Its wings crackle like parchment. In its beak, a scroll. From her, "Return now," the note says, "or I will tear the sky open." You sigh. Of course she will. You look at Hades. Open the gate? He does, but slower than usual. And this time, when you rise, you bring the fog with you. The sky is off when you arrive. It's not wrong. Exactly, just slightly tilted. The sun seems to flicker. The wind hesitates between breezes, and the shadows don't quite know where to fall. You step onto the surface like someone stepping back into a dream that changed its furniture while you were gone. Demeter is already there. She looks like she hasn't slept in 6 days, which, knowing her, means she hasn't even blinked. Her hair's wild. Her dress is damp with dew and divine panic. And behind her, the grass tries, bless it to grow in time with her breathing. It fails. You don't smile. She doesn't scold you, which is worse. So, she says, "You stayed late." I did. You expect her to rage. to demand an explanation. But instead, she turns away, walks into the fields. She touches a seedling. It wilts. You follow her, slowly. They've started calling it Persephone's pause. She murmurs. That week between seasons now, when nothing grows, when the animals forget what to do, you nod. You felt it too. The tug of war inside the soil. Nature hesitating. Like, it can't decide if it's waking up or being buried. It's not a pause. You say quietly, it's balance. She laughs. But it's a cold, tight sound, like someone choking on nostalgia. Is that what you call it? Balance. While I wither and wait. You don't answer, because she's not wrong. But she's also not the only one grieving. Your time above ground feels different now, like trying to wear a childhood dress that doesn't quite fit. Everything is too bright, too loud. The people rush. Worship has turned from offerings to questions. Why doesn't spring come all at once anymore? Why do the flowers bloom, then stop? Where is she? They're talking about you. You, the goddess who now arrives with a delay, who no longer bursts through the soil laughing, who walks instead. Who measures her return with the calm of someone who's been elsewhere, with the weight of someone who's been underneath? Here's your historical fact. The Greeks didn't mark seasons by months, they watched the land. When the barley rose, Persephone had returned. When it browned, she had left. No clocks, just soil memory. And your fringe tidbit. Some ancient calendars recorded a mysterious dead week. Before spring festivals, no planting, no singing, no rites. A pause. For her, for you, the mortals whisper more now. Some say, you've changed. Some say you've chosen death. Some say you never came back at all. That what walks among them is just a shadow in flowered robes. You sit in your old room, the tapestries are the same, but the air feels thinner. Your mirror is ordinary here, just a reflection. You stare at yourself. You say, I don't know who that is. Demeter knocks. She doesn't enter. She just says, come to the orchard. You do. The orchard is bare. Trees like skeletal fingers, branches creaking with accusation. She hands you a seed. Help me. You kneel beside her. You press the seed into the soil. You both wait. Nothing happens. Demeter closes her eyes. You're not all here. No, you admit. And I never will be again. She breathes. For once, not to scold, but to understand. The seed twitches. Just once. A tiny sprout pushes through. Not tall, not quick, but real. You look at her. I'm not coming back the same. Ever. She doesn't cry, but her hands tremble as they cover the seed. You plant another, and another, together, in silence. Because this is how it begins now. Not with bursting meadows and trumpet vines, but with cautious roots, and mutual grief, and a goddess who no longer belongs fully to either world, but who is learning how to stand in both. Time above slows down, not the way it does when you're bored, but the way it does when you're too aware of each passing moment. Like someone turned up the volume on existence, you hear the snow melting before it touches the ground. You feel the roots shift beneath your feet. You watch the light change, not in hours, but in colors. Demeter calls it renewal. You call it surveillance, because even when she smiles, you can feel her watching, weighing, measuring how much of you still belongs here, as if spring's success hinges on how sunny you're willing to act. You play the part. For a while, you walk through fields of wheat. You pet lambs. You let mortals braid flower crowns into your hair like you're still the girl who used to squeal at dandelions. But inside, you're counting again. You miss the silence, the weightlessness of being beneath, the conversations that took centuries, and the ghosts that didn't ask for anything but to be remembered. You miss judgment and quiet and the smell of dust that never stirs. The surface world is full of noise. One afternoon, as you're standing before a crowd of mortals praising your return, you spot something strange. A young woman barefoot, hair tangled, eyes hollow. She's not clapping. She's staring at you. You step down. Walk to her. She doesn't bow. She says, I dreamed of you. You sat on a throne made of petals and bone. You told me I wouldn't feel lost forever. You blink. When? 3 months ago. The night my sister died. You feel a cold ripple run through the grass. Demeter approaches, puts a hand on your shoulder. She smiles at the girl. My daughter brings hope. The girl looks at Demeter, then back at you. She brings truth. You don't correct her, because she's right. Here's your historical fact. In certain regions of ancient Greece, Persephone wasn't just associated with spring and vegetation, she was invoked during rites of divination. As a bridge between the worlds, she was believed to whisper truths to those on the edge of grief. Fringe theory. Some tomb inscriptions claim Persephone spoke to the dead in dreams, guiding them across the boundary. A goddess of sleep's twin sister, the goddess of return. You begin showing up in dreams more, not intentionally. You just appear. To widows, to lost children, to the lonely ones, not as comfort, but as witness. They begin leaving offerings not just in temples, but in doorways, on windowsills. A single black seed, a dried flower, a note, folded 12 times and burned before the sunrise. They call them Persephone's prayers. You don't answer them, but you feel them. You start sleeping in shorter stretches. You begin walking alone through forests that smell like endings. You press your hands to trees and feel them decide whether to keep growing or not. One night, the moon hangs lower than usual. You wake with dirt on your fingers. You dreamt of the underworld. Again, only this time, you weren't visiting. You were sitting on your throne, and the hall was full. You rise before dawn. You walk to the edge of a cliff that overlooks your mother's temple. You sit there, quiet, watching. Demeter finds you there. Of course, she says nothing for a long while. Then, you're different this year. So are the seasons. She nods. You could stay longer. You pause. Then, or leave sooner. She flinches. Not visibly, just in the way her voice thins when she whispers. Would you still return? You don't answer. Because that's the question, isn't it? When is return a promise? And when is it a choice? You begin keeping visitors, not mortals, not gods, not ghosts, exactly, but the almosts, women who arrive in the stillness between dying and being remembered, men who wake up mid-dream and find themselves on a threshold, half here, half gone. Children who forget they've died and wander into your garden asking if they're late for dinner. They don't stay long. Most return. Some don't. You offer them tea, not real tea, of course, something warm and clear and slightly glowing. It smells like rosemary and quiet. You serve it in cups made of cooled obsidian, your own personal touch. You talk with them about regrets, about names, about the feeling of unfinished sentences. You don't judge. You just sit with them. Sometimes that's all anyone wants. Cerberus lies near the door, tail thumping occasionally. More therapy dog than terrifying guardian now. You start calling these meetings shade hours. They catch on. Soon, even the Furies stop by. Not for vengeance, for venting. One of them rants for 20 minutes straight about a mortal who named his boat after her without permission. You offer her more tea. Hades stops in. Curious, he watches you across the room as you listen to a woman recall the exact scent of her daughter's hair on the day she died. You don't speak. You just hold the silence like a mirror. Later, Hades says, "You've created something." You shrug. People need a place to be halfway. He smiles. You've built a porch on the front of the underworld. You laugh softly. Yes, a porch for ghosts. Here's your historical fact. In ancient Greek culture, the dead weren't always gone. They were in flux, especially right after death. Rituals were performed not just to send them off, but to make sure they stayed sent. This liminal zone, neither living nor fully dead, was sacred. Your fringe tidbit. Some Greeks believed a soul could linger for exactly 41 days. Not 40, not 42. During this time, they could wander, speak, even influence the living if they found a crack in the world. Your porch is that crack, and they come. Not all at once, never in crowds, but steady. You begin to recognize them. One woman returns 5 times before finally deciding she's ready to pass. A boy asks if his dog is there. You point to Cerberus, who flops over on his side like a shaggy mattress. The boy laughs, climbs onto one of the heads, and falls asleep. You find yourself smiling more here than above. Because here, no one expects you to bloom. No one tells you to cheer up or smile for the harvest. You are not spring here. You are stillness. You are shade. You are what happens when the light dims but doesn't go out. One evening, you leave the porch. You wander through the palace alone. Past sleeping shades, past doors sealed for millennia, past the room you still haven't unlocked with the key Hades gave you long ago. You stop in front of it. The key is warm in your hand. You open the door. Inside, a garden. But not one of yours. This one pulses. The vines glow faint red. The petals breathe. The air feels thick with the memories of every soul that's ever passed through here. You step into it. You kneel. You place your hands in the soil. And it answers, not in words, but in recognition. This is the core of the underworld. Its true heart. Not thrones, not rivers, not judgment. Memory. The unspoken, unburied truth. You whisper, I see you. And the ground blooms. A single white flower. You do not pick it. You rise. You leave it there. A promise that not everything forgotten must be lost. When you return to your porch, the ghosts are gone. The tea is still warm, and the stars above your garden flicker in new constellations ones no mortal has named. Yet, you don't remember asking for a garden. But you wake one evening, and there it is, not outside, inside, nestled in a chamber you've never seen before, behind a door that wasn't there yesterday. You open it, and suddenly the air smells like cypress, rain-soaked stone, and something like piano music. If piano music could grow on vines, the garden glows, not with sunlight, with memory. The kind that hums behind your ribs when someone says your name gently, the kind you didn't know you missed. The paths are made of bone-colored stone. Soft moss lines the edges. Plants you've never seen anywhere else bloom quietly, unshowy. One shimmers like silver hair. Another grows in spirals and seems to hum your mother's lullaby when you brush it. You step in barefoot. It's quiet here. Not dead quiet, sacred quiet. You know, without asking, who made this? Hades. You find him sitting beneath a tree that's flowering with ghost orchids. Your favorites. He doesn't say anything as you approach. He simply pats the space beside him. You sit. Why? You ask. He doesn't pretend not to understand. Because this place was never meant to be mine alone. He says, and you were never meant to be anyone's shadow. You look at him. He's not smiling, but he's not guarded either. The edges of him seem softer here, as if he, too, has found a space where he doesn't have to be anything other than what he is. A man made of silence. And waiting, and maybe, just maybe, hope. You pluck a small bloom from a tree. It crumbles into mist in your palm. You watch the pieces scatter and reform midair, drifting upward like reverse snow. Do they know? You ask. The living. He tilts his head. Know what? That we love them. He nods. After a long pause, sometimes, usually not until too late, you exhale. Here's your historical fact. Hades was one of the few Greek gods who remained faithful to his partner. Unlike Zeus's endless affairs and Poseidon's dramatic sea flings, Hades never took another lover once Persephone became queen. And your fringe tidbit. Some rare Orphic fragments suggest Hades built Persephone a secret grove where souls in deepest despair could come to rest. And she would walk barefoot there, brushing their hair until they remembered who they once were. You rise and begin walking the garden's perimeter. As you pass, the plants respond, not just to your footsteps, but to your presence. Flowers tilt their heads, leaves unfurl, vines gently brush your arms like they're recognizing their gardener. Their queen. You feel tears prick your eyes, because here, finally, no one asks you to smile, or be gentle, or bloom. Here, you exist. And that is enough. You turn to Hades. I want to open this. You say, to the ones who can't rest. He stands. Then it's yours. The next evening, the first soul enters. She's quiet. A woman with eyes like river stones and a voice like torn paper. She doesn't speak for hours. She just kneels in the garden, breathes. Then, I was never kind to my son. You say nothing. She says, I want to remember him, not my shame. So you walk her to a flower. You brush your hand across its petals. It glows. Inside it, a moment. Her son, age 5, drawing her a picture of a bird with too many wings. She gasps, then she smiles, then she vanishes. No fanfare, just peace, one by one. The garden fills, not with bodies, with moments, lost ones. Ones that never got closure. You start calling it the Garden of Remains. It's quiet most of the time, but not always. Sometimes the plants sing. Sometimes they scream, but always, always they remember. And you finally feel whole. You walk between rows of the unloved and the forgotten. You give them place. And in doing so, you take yours. They call it the cult of the return. Not officially. Of course, you don't get to trademark a mystery religion, but the mortals start whispering about it between harvests. In spring, they hold hands and say your name under their breath, not like a goddess, but like a threshold. You're not worshipped with gold. You're worshipped with torches, with silence, with stories told in fields at night, faces lit only by the flame's slow flicker. There are no temples for this cult, just caves and basements, and the in-between places where secrets are safe and barley, always barley. They scatter it at their feet when they pray. They bake it into cakes shaped like crescents. They sleep with it in their palms, hoping to dream of you. You never asked for this, but you understand it, because the truth is, they don't need someone who rescues them. They need someone who returned, someone who went beneath and came back changed, and did not lie about the cost. Here's your historical fact. The Eleusinian Mysteries honored Persephone as both the lost daughter and the queen of the dead. Initiates underwent symbolic death and rebirth rituals that promised better things after dying. Not heaven, but understanding. And your fringe tidbit. Some evidence suggests the rites involved a hallucinogenic drink made from fermented barley and ergot, the same fungus that later sparked witch hunts. They didn't just see the gods, they became them. Back in the underworld, you receive their prayers like messages folded into smoke. They arrive in your garden, in your tea steam, in the way the wind changes just before someone speaks. One woman asks to forget her pain. Another asks never to forget her sister's voice. One man begs you to haunt him until he confesses to a crime. You honor them all in your own way. Sometimes that means guiding a shade gently into memory. Sometimes it means whispering just one word into a dream that makes someone wake up sobbing but free. Your garden becomes more than a place. It becomes a bridge. And like all bridges, it begins to tremble under the weight of expectation. Some souls don't want to leave. Some mortals try to enter. One night, a priestess arrives with a lantern of bone. She kneels, doesn't speak. You approach. She hands you a seed. No one remembers my name. She says, "Can I plant it here?" You nod. She stands. "Then I am remembered," and vanishes, just like that. Later, Hades appears beside you. They will start calling you the doorway. You smirk. Let them. You're not afraid of being the path. No. You pause. Of being walked on forever. Maybe. He chuckles. Then let's lay stone. So you do. You build a proper path to the garden. It winds gently through the palace, only opens when you want it to. But now there's shape, structure. Ghosts stop wandering. They arrive with purpose. And the living, they start dreaming in patterns. They begin waking up with soil under their nails. One girl scrawls your name in her diary after a nightmare vanishes mid-scream. One man begins drawing ghost orchids on every surface he sees. They don't know why, but you do. You are seeping into them now, not like a plague, like a root. A steady, silent rooting of truth beneath all the bright lies of mortality. The next time you visit the surface, things feel different. Not wrong, not fractured, but layered. You walk through your mother's domain and feel a second rhythm beneath every step. You see a shadow flicker inside a daffodil. You hear your name echo inside a child's giggle. They don't worship you in daylight, but they feel you in dusk. Demeter meets you in the orchard. She looks at your hands. They're soil-stained, callous. Where have you been? You answer truthfully. Gardening. She sighs. You love them now. I understand them now. And him. You smile. That's more complicated. Because it is. Because Hades didn't save you. He made space for you. And maybe, in a world of gods and demands, that's the most loving thing anyone's ever done. You stop calling it the underworld. Not allowed. That would cause panic. But in your mind, you rename it the between. Not a kingdom, not a prison, not even a destination, just the place after knowing. But before forgetting, you rule it differently now. You're not interested in punishment. You let the Furies keep their thunder. You let the judges do their weighing. But when they finish, they come to you, and you listen. A man who never told his wife he loved her. A girl who burned down a village for revenge. A soldier who saved lives, but hated himself for surviving. You don't erase their sins. You just let them breathe. In your garden, the air holds no accusation. Only mirrors, small ones. Not to reflect faces, but moments. You walk among them each dusk. You touch one. a quiet apology. Another, a memory rewritten to finally feel kind. They float beside you now, gentle as moths, above ground. People still say you were stolen, that you were dragged, that Hades chained you in shadow, and Demeter shattered the earth in grief. But below, everyone knows better. You chose, not once, every day, and choice, repeated enough, becomes a crown. Here's your historical fact. In the Homeric hymn to Demeter, one of the oldest versions of your myth, Persephone smiles at Hades as she returns to him. It's a single line, often ignored, often debated. Fringe theory. Some ancient inscriptions show Persephone alone on her throne, without Hades beside her, as if, over time, she became not just a co-ruler but the ruler, the queen. Period. Your throne now sits in its own room. You designed it yourself. It's not made of bones. It's made of black wood, soft lined with moss, inscribed with names that no one remembers but you. When you sit in it, you don't feel powerful. You feel anchored. Every now and then, Hades comes to sit beside you. He doesn't speak unless you want him to. He knows that silence is your language now. One evening, he brings you a new flower. It has no color, not because it's dead, but because it's made of sound. It hums gently, like a lullaby hummed by someone who can't quite remember the words. You plant it. It sings to the other blooms. In return, they shift slightly, like the garden is listening back. It is because you're not just growing memory anymore. You're growing presence. The ability to stay, even after everything else has gone. You begin teaching others. These soft shades, the ones who used to tremble in corners, you show them how to guide new souls in. You show them how to offer a cup of tea, how to say, "You're safe here," how to remind the dead they are still worth knowing. You are no longer just the queen of the dead. You are the first voice they hear, and the last hand they hold. Sometimes, when the wind shifts just right above ground, mortals claim to hear something in the barley. A voice, not quite a whisper, not quite a breeze. It says, "You're still here," and that matters. They don't know it's you, but they leave flowers anyway. Just in case, the line between worlds thins, not seasonally, naturally, as if your footsteps, tracked back and forth across the veil for centuries, have finally worn a permanent groove, like a soft breath between sleep and waking, like dusk. When light and dark blur for just a moment and no one knows who's in charge, you rise to the surface now with less effort. The gate opens before you touch it. Even Demeter doesn't resist anymore. She waits, quiet, beside the first blossom of spring, hands folded, face unreadable. She doesn't ask where you've been. She doesn't ask what you've done. You think she's afraid of the answer, but she still walks with you through the fields. You name the new sprouts. She shows you which ones survived the frost. You speak less now, and somehow understand each other more. "Will it always be like this?" she asks one morning. You tilt your head. "What do you mean?" "This half of you," you don't answer. Because it's not half, it's whole. Just different. Above ground, your name changes. Children leave ghost orchid drawings in the corners of scrolls. Old women whisper to the soil as they bury their husbands, asking you to carry them gently. Men who fear death less than forgetting carry barley seeds in their pockets, just in case. Your name is spoken not as a warning, but as a promise. Not the queen of death, but the one who comes back. Here's your final historical fact. In Roman mythology, you were Proserpina, but your core story remained: the girl taken, the woman returned, the queen below and above, the pivot on which the seasons turn, a goddess of cycles, not conclusions. And one last fringe theory. Some fringe scholars believe the entire myth was never about you at all, but about what it means to live with both joy and grief. That you were a metaphor for humanity's oldest truths. That no one ever truly leaves anything behind, they just learn to carry it better. The final time you walk back into the underworld, the souls line the path. They don't bow, they don't cheer, they simply stand, present. Witnesses. You step past them, bare feet soft on the moss, your hair braided with silver petals. Your garden opens for you, vines parting like breath, the flowers glowing faintly in rhythm with your pulse. You sit in your throne, not alone, but sovereign. Hades arrives quietly. He stands beside you, but not as your shadow, as your equal, as your witness. You hold out your hand. He takes it. You say nothing, because nothing needs saying. You are both present, both returned. And you know, somewhere far above, the barley begins to stir again, slowly, softly, with reverence. So now, as the petals fall and the stars begin to fade from your garden sky, let's linger just a little longer here. With Persephone, you're standing at the edge of two worlds, light and dark, spring and shadow. One foot among the blooming fields, the other resting on cooled stone. And for once, there's no rush to choose. The earth breathes quietly beneath you. It doesn't demand anything. It simply waits, as it always does, for whatever comes next. That's the secret Persephone learned, and the one she now keeps for all of us. That it's okay to be both soft and strong, to grieve and still grow, to leave and still be loved when you return. Let your thoughts slow down now. Let them settle like seeds into soil tended not by pressure, but by patience. There's no need to bloom tonight. Just rest. The queen of the underworld watches over the restless. She knows the weight of memory. She knows how to carry it. And so do you. Let the garden dim. Let the air cool. The ghosts are quiet now. Even the pomegranate trees have stopped whispering. You are safe here. You are known here. And when you wake again, the world will still be turning. Not because it must, but because you chose to stay in it.